I appreciate everybody attending today. Hope everybody is staying safe with all the craziness in the world. My name is Chris Cole. I am the EVP of Operations at ATG. I am headquartered out of the Little Rock office. And so today I'm going to help kind of moderate this and push the right question, hopefully to the right guy, and get some questions answered for you guys. I want to start for a second. I'm joined by ATG's finest, some of our civil staff on the civil side of the business. And so I'm going to start with Rob and pass it over to Rob and let him introduce himself, and then let everybody kind of tell them a little bit about themselves. Rob?
Rob Bigelow with ATG and Director of Civil Services, and been with ATG for about 3.5 years and in the industry for about 25 years, doing various random things throughout the industry. Love what I do, love these types of engagements, and love talking about civil infrastructure. And I'm fortunate enough to have a pretty good team here. These guys are rock stars in the industry, and I want to go through one at a time here and just kind of introduce yourselves. And I don't know if everyone sees the same squares from left to right, but we'll start with Jeff, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hey everybody, my name is Jeff Haney. I'm a senior civil technical specialist here. I'm out of the Indianapolis, Indiana area, and been with ATG for about 3 months now. And overall, I got 15 plus years experience in the industry.
All right, Patrick.
Yeah, I'm Patrick Smith here, and I'm a civil technical specialist. I've only been here for about a month now, but loving it so far. And previous work experience has been in a civil firm in Lacey, Washington, and pretty much found my calling in the civil field. Yeah, not really, and I've been loving it ever since. So.
My name is Glenn Houck. I am a civil technical specialist. I've been with ATG for 1.5 years now, and I'm really enjoying it.
Scott, go ahead.
My name is Scott Mizek, Senior Technical Specialist. I've been with ATG for about 1.5 years, but on the reseller side for 8.5 years. Prior to that, I was a surveyor for 6, but using Autodesk software for about the last 29 years.
Okay, Kyle.
Hey everybody, my name is Kyle Groves. I am an EIT. I've been with ATG for about coming on my 3rd year soon. And then been in the industry for about 3 years before that, working primarily on solid waste projects, residential site design, and commercial site design. I'm also the storm and sanitary analysis guy on the team. So if you have any hydrology modeling needs, you're probably going to get routed to me.
Yep, Frank.
Hey everybody, my name's Frank Diemert. I've been with ATG. I'm the Civil Production Project Manager for ATG. I've been with the company since actually July of 2019, brought on permanently in February. I've been all around. I've been utilizing Civil 3D since the 2008 version was first released in 2007. I've done just about everything you can do in Civil 3D with some minor exceptions to survey, with about 24 years in the business itself. And prior to that, I spent about 15 years out in the field running the equipment. So the knowledge of being able to apply it in the field once it's designed is very good for my background. So, and welcome aboard everybody. Thanks for coming.
Awesome.
Okay, it looks like we have a couple other people on here too. I don't know if you wanted to introduce them, Chris.
Yeah, so Chris Brenton, I'll let you kind of give us a little bit about your background.
My name is Chris Brenton.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, my name is Chris Brenton. I work for Hilgart Wilson. I'm a CAD manager here, and been invited and just to see what you guys are talking about.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Good to see you. And then Jason, kind of tell us a little bit about yourself.
Just a senior project designer, Hilgart Wilson. Been in the industry for about 20 years.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate you guys joining. So the way we'll do this today for the attendees is you can either put your questions in the Q&A panel or in the chat window, or if there's a lull in the process here, you feel free to speak up. So that's kind of how we'll do it. I've already got 2 questions in the chat window. And then guys from ATG, I'll let you wrestle for whoever wants to grab on it first. The first one is I'm working on a 4 to 8 residential unit development on the coast of Maine. I have a complicated topo map in AutoCAD. I use Revit 2020, interested in reviewing procedures of setting up topo in Revit, then how to link separate Revit produced home projects on site plans showing topo. Right, pretty intense. Scott Mizek, you look like you're dying to jump in on this one, so I'm gonna pass it to you.
Well, actually, I was going to let Kyle Groves handle it because that is the civil to Revit that he is the expert on.
Perfect. Kyle Groves, you're muted.
You're muted.
Michael, thanks. That's a pretty great question. So I'm actually not aware of a good way. There might be a way to take topo information from Revit and import it into Civil 3D. However, Civil 3D is, as being the infrastructure design software, the better place to go through and create your topo surfaces and that proposed topography. So there's a lot of great ways to get topo data from Civil 3D into Revit. And aside from doing an XML import or something along those lines, when you consume a Revit model inside Civil 3D, you pretty much have to export it out to DWG format. And that's going to be AutoCAD based, not as a Civil 3D based file. So if Revit is where you're creating and modifying that information, it's going to be pretty tough to get that back into Civil 3D as an intelligent file. So I would strongly recommend you go the other way and create your stuff in Civil 3D first, and then you can, let me share my screen here. If you have BIM 360, you do have the opportunity to, come on, Civil, let's go. If you're in Civil 3D, you do have the opportunity to, in versions 2019 and 2020, in your Collaborate tab, you do have the option to publish a surface from Civil 3D into BIM 360 docs. That surface can then be consumed by the Revit model, and any updates, you can just save out a new file from Civil 3D into the BIM 360 docs location, and then Revit can just reload that surface. You don't have to go back and update any of your other Revit information based off of that. It's just going to refresh your definition for you.
Hey, Kyle, he said that the topo is in AutoCAD, and he wants to use just, I assume he's saying he wants to use just Revit.
Yeah, Revit is not fantastic. As a not Revit person, Glenn, you might actually have a slightly more to modify or to throw in here. Yeah, Revit is not designed to do site design work. There's a few things you can do in there, but if you're doing a robust site design, you should really try to be using Civil 3D as opposed to Revit or base AutoCAD.
Okay. So then somebody asked the question, is there anything in the new versions of the software that will do 2D flow analysis like the current version of HEC-RES? Kyle Groves.
Hey, me again.
Yeah,
so new versions that will do 2D flow analysis, like HEC-RES? No, so I never used HEC-RES when I was in industry. I did use some HEC-HMS, which is similar to some other programs like HydroCAD, as well as Civil 3D's Storm and Sanitary Analysis. Storm and Sanitary is a robust 3D modeling or a robust H&H modifier, but as far as doing things to communicate back and forth between Civil 3D and HEC-RES, you would be looking at downloading the free Autodesk published River and Flood module. It helps you create your sections and get that information just more ready to consume HEC-RES info / prepare it to be consumed by HEC-RES. There is also the pipe network modify. Let me get into my contextual ribbon. There is the Analyze Gravity Network inside Civil 3D. They brought that functionality in 2018, and it's been getting steadily better through the versions. I haven't tried it in 21 yet, but in 2020, it's pretty all right. And this goes through and it will run a rational analysis on your pipes, help you do some resizing, both of your pipes and of your structures. And you can get some info in there. I don't have a pipe network up right now. Otherwise, I could go through that. Does that answer your question, anonymous attendee?
Mr. Attendee, yep. Well, while we wait for that one, and this may be for you too again, Kyle, is there a benefit of using pressure networks over pipe networks for water lines?
I have not grown to like the pressure network tool set. It's gotten a little bit of attention over the last version or two, but we actually do have somewhere in the ATG archives, I did a pair of webinars on how you can use the Gravity Pipe Networks toolset to do a pretty decent workflow of designing and modeling your water main systems. A lot of feature lines, a little bit of light duty pipe network part builder editing for your catalog, just kind of rename some stuff, throw in some new blocks. I don't like the pressure network toolset very much. Let some other folks weigh in on that on the panel.
It looks pretty in 2D in plan view. So you can actually see the valves and the T's. But once you look at profile view of the pressure networks, it looks a little bit ugly. I guess the only benefit that I see, pressure versus gravity, is putting in those vertical bends is a little bit easier. Other than that, most people haven't found the need or the desire to move from using their old workflow of gravity networks into the pressure. Just for the fact that, yeah, the parts are a little limited right now. I say that pressure network is probably still at about, what, 75% of where it needs to be very useful. So most people say it's not worth my time to migrate to pressure networks when they still have a decent workflow using gravity.
Anybody else?
And it also depends what exactly you want to do with that pressure network and how real you want to make it look. I mean, you can add the blocks and stuff that you're used to adding in just your regular AutoCAD drawings and make it look good in the profiles. But for the most part, I like it because of the rulings that's involved in it. You can set your rules for your depths and get your slopes and your cuts and get your ability to run underneath your sanitary and your stormwater and stuff like that is a lot easier for me, and setting the bends and stuff that you need to send. But you really don't have a lot of that flexibility within the regular pipe network. The pipe network, again, is mostly all blocks when you're doing it, even in plan view. So
okay,
it does have a long way to go.
Okay, awesome. So I got two questions here. This one's kind of lengthy, so so bear with me. Our firm does a good amount of large roadway projects, which can involve 100+ plan sheets. When we use MicroStation, we use a container file. This file has all the required XREFs and is then referenced into every sheet during setup. When we change layer properties in this file, it is then reflected in all 100+ of our sheet files. To the best of our knowledge, this does not work in AutoCAD. In AutoCAD, we are forced to open every sheet file and load the layer state. Is it possible to use the workflow described for our MicroStation projects? If not, what can we do to improve our workflow in AutoCAD with the container file?
With my experience with MicroStation, it sounds like what you're basically asking here is Civil 3D utilizes a template file instead of a seed file. The template file should have all your layer states available to it when you start your project drawing. If you start with a simple DWT file and then have to add everything afterwards, yeah, the workflow is a little bit harder. But again, if you start with a standard DWT, the DWT that your company has set up with your standards already in it, you could have different DWTs. You can have a roadway, you can have a subdivision, you could have a survey DWT file, which is your template file. And that sounds like the way you're going to want to go. And then it's just a matter of simply linking your XREFs and stuff to that file as you build your file up.
So Frank,
I
she's
would-
Alexandra said they don't use Civil 3D. I guess they're using a pure AutoCAD software.
Yeah, well, MicroStation and AutoCAD, two different mules. So
Right.
Civil 3D is based for this kind of work, this infrastructure work, and it's your best bet for your money if you're going to be doing a lot of infrastructure and roadways.
Okay.
Hey Frank, the biggest thing that I read on that is when we change layer properties in this file, so they're looking at changing one line or one layer from red to blue, and it affects all 100 sheets. Whereas right now it's using layer states. So,
Right.
I mean, you could definitely run a list routine
Yes.
on there that could automatically change that information. But yeah, the template starts you there, but having to change properties in the layers, little odd there. You might, like I said, need a batch routine or a custom Lisp.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Well, Patrick, I think this one's probably more geared to you. The second question was, is there a way to generate coordinates of an object based off of roadway stationing? For example, if we have 50 objects, we'd like to be able to quickly get each of their stations and offsets from the center line. Patrick, you're muted, bud.
So I did see that she does say that she doesn't use Civil 3D. So my method is more geared towards Civil 3D. But I'm definitely willing to show her and everyone else a little bit of what I'm talking about. So everyone can see my screen, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, so there's a method of using structures in order to get you can either use northing, easting, station offsets from center lines, or any alignment. You can get TCFLs, top of curb, flow lines, and I have a webinar coming up on how to set up all this information, because the setup does take a little bit, but once you get it set up, it's pretty seamless. And just by putting down any of these structures here, you can actually, it updates into a table, giving you your station offsets from that center line, or you can also have northing, eastings, however you want to show it on your table. Elevation points of those positions of wherever you put your structures into. So it all updates into in that table of wherever you put your structures.
Patrick, can you talk a little bit more about why pipe network structures do a good job at this as opposed to Kogo points?
Well, Kogo points, I don't believe would give you a station offset from a center line. They can give you northing, eastings. Also, putting it into a table, I think, frees up a lot of room into your drawing instead of having labels with massive amounts of information, whether it be like, sometimes you might want descriptions, or you'll have northing, easting, then you have your point number, and then you might want elevations on top of it. I mean, having it in a single number here and then, referencing that to a table, that would, that's a benefit to using this. One thing that Kogo points wouldn't be able to do is this section right here is giving you two separate numbers off of one point. So you'll have, this is just an example of like a top of curb and flow line. A top of curb is going to be 0.5 or 6 inches higher than the other one. I just put down one single point and it will give you that 0.5 increase or decrease, however you have it set up. And don't believe Kogo points will do that for you.
Yeah, I also
Yeah,
don't think, even though they can go in, you can set them up with a station offset originally, I don't think you can table that info because it's not tracking it dynamically.
Yeah, and then like if you were to add into, if I can do this here real quick.
I was going to say, this is a great workflow, great workaround that Patrick has found. So if you guys can attend this webinar, this would be well worth it. When is that coming up, Patrick?
Sometime this month, I believe. I don't have a set date yet on it yet, I don't think. But I'm pretty much set up and ready to go whenever it needs to happen. One thing that I do have issues with is is sometimes when you throw down a structure, my cursor kind of goes away like that right there. Just kind of disappears. I just click off the screen. I think it's not for this workflow. For me anyways, it seems to be with any pipe network. It's a Civil 3D issue, I think. But don't freak out if there's your cursor goes away either. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, throw down a structure at any point or given location that you want to find a elevation to or station offset for something. So these station offsets are coming off of this alignment right here. I also have another one set up over here if we went over here. But yeah, it just, you know, once it's set up, it's pretty seamless. It's the setting up that takes a little bit, but once you get it saved into your template, it's, you know, easy going from there. So, and I hope that answers a little bit about, I mean, I know you don't use Civil 3D, but maybe, and I haven't looked into what basic AutoCAD function, I don't, because they don't have structures or anything like that, but that's what I got.
Also, Alexandra, on some other reasons why maybe using Civil 3D would be better for you than AutoCAD in this situation. If you're creating 100 sheets on a roadway project, you're probably doing plan and profile, and you're probably doing cross sections. Civil 3D has a couple of different tools that makes getting those sheets themselves put together a lot more efficient than manually pasting around a whole bunch of plan view and profile view scaled up blocks that say, give me a viewport over here. That's really going to cut down on the amount of time in your model to put that together.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So
cool. Yep, and that's May 21st. Looks like that
May 21st.
Webinar is scheduled. Yep.
Cool. Yeah.
Yep.
Hope if anybody's interested in how this workflow is created, so you can add it, just go ahead and join that webinar, and I'll walk through how everything here has been created so that you can add it to your templates. So.
Awesome. Awesome. So this is, I'm going to push this question over to Chris and Jason, and I want to see what their perspectives are on this. Somebody asked thoughts on Dynamo. Are you guys using any Dynamo at Hilgard right now?
This is Chris. No, I have not tested it yet to see how we would benefit from it.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, cool. No, I was just seeing if you guys were using it. So for the panelists on the screen, I know Patrick on the Revit side is pretty engaged with Dynamo on that side. Anybody on this side using anything Dynamo for the civil side of the fence? Nothing?
Oh, not yet. Not yet.
Okay. Okay, awesome. And then another one said, if I have a pond volume that I need to achieve and I know the bottom and top elevations of the pond, what's the best way to size the pond for the desired volume?
So I saw that question come through a few minutes ago. If you can circle back to me, Chris, I might be able to have some live workflow to walk through for that.
Cool. Cool. So yeah, so Kyle, just ping me when you got something put together for that, and we can bring that up. And then Alexandria said, good to know. We are landscape architects, so we only do plan, but we should consider Civil 3D. So she's looking for that. So while we're kind of at a little bit of a lull here, I'll just kind of throw this question out for all you guys. I know this will be an interesting topics here. If there was one Civil 3D function that you could get Autodesk to add in that's not in there right now, what would it be? What's Civil 3D? What would you like to see inside of Civil 3D?
Yeah, I'll start off with that one. I would like to see pads being more dynamic. So like if you got your corridor going through, go ahead and have it automatically assign pad elevations without going in and figuring that. I had a situation back at one job where we kind of used Action Recorder to help produce that, but I wish it would be more dynamic.
Okay, anybody else?
You're muted.
For me, I would like to see a little bit more on the surveying side. We have user-defined properties that will come into the survey point, but I would like to be able to quickly manipulate that over to the survey figure line. So it'd be more like a GIS file. So if I take my back of curb line and I turn that into GIS data, it would have all that information. Hey, it's B612 curb, maybe it's concrete, maybe it's bituminous, rolled bit, whatever. Right now, it doesn't do that. And then to put a side note on that, to be able to take survey figure lines and automatically turn that into GIS data. So I don't have to explode it into a dumb polyline.
Somebody on the Windows said they'd like to see generative design. They would like to be able to put some parameters on a site and get multiple grading options out there as well. Chris, Jason, you know, you guys are pretty intense civil users. What do you feel like you wish Autodesk would do next from a Civil 3D perspective?
This is Chris. You know, we're in the Phoenix area, and one of the things that we struggle with is our industry here doesn't do cross sections a lot for road design. We do what's called like a 3-line profile or a 5-line profile, where we do left top of curb gutter profiling, center line profiling, and then right top of curb and gutter profiles, all in one profile view. So recently, Civil 3D did the offset profiling, but they didn't add labeling to those offset profiles. All you get is the line work. So I would like them to add labeling so we can add label sets to those lines that it offsets from the center line profile.
Okay, interesting. Something that we get questions, I know a lot, specifically on the sales side, is customers asking if they should have multiple template files. What's opinions on here of people about, you know, having multiple template files?
Yeah, I think it depends on the company, right? So if you have a survey engineering firm, I would think it'd be a good practice to have one for engineering and one for the survey side. I can also see companies have multiple ones for, you know, road plans as well. So it depends on how big your files are and how easy you want to navigate through them. Any other thoughts from my team?
Yep. Anybody else?
Yeah, I agree. Depending on how large of a project it is, obviously, but like roadway plans and stuff, you're going to want set up for your storm drainage too. So a lot of times one goes in hand with the other. If you're doing a large roadway project, it's just a matter of breaking it up and doing it in multiple files. But definitely multiple templates with, especially between civil and survey and site planning. It's almost impossible not to.
Cool. Well, that kind of leads to a second question is, what about file size limits, recommendations around how big the file should get? Kyle Groves, I know that's one of your passion projects.
Yeah, I'm constantly doing trainings and talking to people, and they're complaining about their slow file sizes. So in my experience, what I have found is that 10 megabytes is about as big as you want any particular Civil 3D file to be. And for context, a Revit file being too big for comfort is about a half a gigabyte, so 500 megabytes. So I have no idea what's going on under the hood where that's what limits Civil 3D, but it's theoretically possible for me to take a picture on my cell phone that has more data in it than Civil 3D can handle in a single file. But you know, just because you have 10 gigabytes or 10 megabytes worth of space in there doesn't mean you can also go through and load in a bunch of other stuff. So even if you only have, say, a 6 or 7 megabyte file, if you have 300 pipe network parts, that's going to slow you down. If you have 10 miles of corridor, even if it's basic, straight, not a lot of targeting or conditionals, and you're still under that 10, maybe 15 megabytes if you can, file size limit, you're still going to notice additional performance slowdowns.
Okay. A couple comments from the window here. Jose said he would love to see the ability to get the 3D surface area in a volume report from either compared surface, was his comment. And Brian Haley asked the question that he is in the process of converting our imperial template to a metric template. Any suggestions or words of caution?
Don't do it.
Start from scratch with the metric and just bring your styles and settings over to it. Don't try to convert one to the other.
Yeah, I've seen issues trying to convert. It brings over ghosts from either one of them. So it's just safer to start out with the right one.
You can bring styles over from an imperial template over into a metric template, and it should pick up the difference, and just drag and drop them. But to try to convert the file itself is a major pain, and I would not recommend it.
Okay, interesting. Mr. Groves, we ready to talk about some ponds, friend?
Yes, sir, we are. Let me get back to my share here. And actually, I might even be referencing a workflow that I initially found from you, Brian, at one way or another, if you've ever, because I think you used to be in the reseller channel. But anyway, so one of the things in Civil 3D and in stormwater design that we're constantly worried about is how big are our detention basins. And I'll bring us back into storm and sanitary analysis to look at all of this. Now, before I answer the direct question, how can we make sure that we're using contours and elevation, area and elevation to do all that determination? I do want to point out that Civil 3D does have an ability to create an export of the information for your contours and for your area of those inside Civil 3D. So if I'm looking at my analyze design, I can run this stage storage command, which is going to go through and allow me to define a detention basin either from polylines that I've already extracted or from all of the currently displayed contours on a surface. When I do that, it's going to generate a somewhat silly file extension name, but I can take that file extension and I can go into storm and sanitary analysis. I can have a storage node. I can load a particular stage storage curve, and that's going to be, again, kind of AECCSST file. That's going to take my contours from Civil 3D and automatically load that to me in SSA. Now, my data set isn't perfectly set up for exactly how to answer this question, but I can at least walk through the theory. When you go through and you run your existing conditions is going to go through, it'll produce a hydrograph for all of that, and then you can go through and also run that same thing for your proposed conditions. So once you have all of your solution files saved and ready to load, you can go into the time series plot portion of storm and sanitary analysis, and then you can go through and you can actually load up those individual solution files. So I will open up my existing 10-year storm. I will open up my proposed 10-year storm. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare my nodes. So basically it's that same outfall node. Your water's leaving the same spot in both conditions. It's just a question of whether or not it's been detained. So that's my existing hydrograph, somewhere near 2.6. And then my proposed hydrograph is, again, I said this is not going to look quite right because my proposed is actually less than my existing in this particular instance. But now it's going to go through and I can say, now that I have these two graphs stacked on top of each other, I can look at my maximum inflow going through both of these. So 2.7, 1.7, I can see there's about a difference of 1.0 CFS. So SSA will actually go through and it will help you calculate what storage volume is required for your basin based off of that maximum flow. So when I type in 1 for my 1 cubic foot per second, it's going to come through. We just saw some stuff play down there in the bottom. And now my detention storage for these nodes has been calculated at about 350 cubic feet. So depending on what that is for your project, and again, this is a little backwards, but it's basically just doing all that calculus for you. giving you your detention storage volume, you would still be on the hook for going back into Civil 3D and making enough contours, making them the correct area to achieve that volume. But SSA is going to help you get closer to understanding this is where I need to be for all of this.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyle. So while we're kind of waiting for some more questions to come in, another thing I hear a lot on our side is data shortcuts, and why would a company, what are the benefits of using data shortcuts in the civil world?
Data shortcuts, they're just like an X reference that keeps the guts back in the source drawing, but brings its appearance into the destination drawing. What this allows you to do is keep your file size under that 10 meg limit that we like to say, one drawing, one purpose, where I can start a topo drawing and it'll be 2.5 megs. But then when I go into my alignment and profile drawing, I X reference in all the line work from the topo drawing, but then I'll data shortcut in the surface into the alignment and profile drawing, build my alignment and profile drawing, and my drawing will actually be about 2.5 megs. Same file size, twice the amount of data. And using the data shortcut through the entire process of a civil project, you're going to keep your file size typically the same all the way through. The other good thing about a data shortcut is the fact that when I build my corridor, I can data reference the surface in the EG surface and then use that as a target for daylighting my corridor. I have that ability to use it as targeting further down the road. While I can target some things in an X reference, like survey figure lines, it's not recommended that you target a surface in an X reference.
So Scott, how hard is that to learn? If I'm not using data shortcuts today, what's the learning curve on that?
15 minutes.
Pretty short. Okay, cool.
Yep.
Awesome. Pretty simple to learn. Good.
Yep.
Awesome. Question, and this is going to open up obviously with the world we live in today with COVID. BIM 360 for civil, fairly new offering by Autodesk. Feedback. First of all, I'm going to ask Chris and Jason. Are you guys using the BIM 360 module for remote work? Oh, looks like we may have lost Chris. Well, what about?
As far as I know, we're not using that.
Okay. Okay. People on the panel here, BIM 360 for civil, thoughts, customers using it, experience with it?
I've got one customer who is just starting to get their toes dipped in. They're primarily civil, but they do have a decent sized Revit presence in their firm. So they're borrowing some stuff. They're using it or plan on using it pretty soon. Not sure when that's going to be happening, but from the testing that I've done, Scott, you've done some testing too, it seems to be working pretty well.
Yep, I agree. I got a couple clients, a couple ATG clients that they're in the process of seeing how valuable it is. And what I'm seeing is it works. It definitely helps. So you don't have to VPN into your network. It also helps if you're dealing with consultants or other clients that need access to the drawings, but you don't want them behind your firewall. So with working from home, it's great because now I don't have to VPN into my network, killing that. I can use BIM 360, still gain access to all the files, still gain access to all the data shortcuts. And that was the biggest concern in the past, was the data shortcuts. Now I can actually create the working folder and the project folder in BIM 360. So now everyone can gain access to the files, which means everyone can get the latest and greatest. And I don't have to say, oh, wait, here, Kyle, here's the topo surface. Go ahead and put that in there. Now that's up to date. Oh, wait, 2 weeks later, yeah, my survey crew went out, got more data. Here's the new topo drawing again. You're always going to get the latest and greatest.
Yeah, and I do also want to circle back to our question before on data references. How easy are they? What are the benefits? It's not just about file size, though. when you take one drawing and it has a purpose and it has the original version of some type of civil 3D object, you know, you've got pipe networks, maybe the sanitary has its own drawing and the storm has its own drawing. Maybe you have your final grading or your existing survey in its own drawing. It also lets you spread the work out among your team. So multiple people can access the same project, can communicate with each other, and have that information automatically update as those components get improved and progressed throughout the project. So it lets you have a bigger project team, and it lets you get through that work more quickly and with more reliable information on those different components of your design.
Okay. So Carmen asks, I would like to know how to add the link and point codes to a subassembly that is created in a subassembly composer with the generic subassemblies. We have complex roadway assemblies that we need to model and can't use the out-of-the-box ones from the tool palettes.
Give me a second. Now I gotta get this out of the way. So many windows.
Why Scott does that, real quick about BIM 360, you could take, some people are probably concerned about moving their data over. Once you create your BIM 360 project, you could actually just drag and drop your project files over, like your entire folder from your file server. You can just drag that over and you can start linking your shortcuts back up again.
Yeah, it's what we don't want to have to reestablish the links. Those broken references are just pain in the butt.
Yep.
But yes, for a lot of people that were used to working off of their server and now they're forced to go home and VPNing in, it takes forever. I heard someone that says, yeah, at work, it takes a minute to load the file. At home, because I have DSL, it takes 15 minutes to load. Now using BIM 360 might be a little bit faster, maybe only 7 minutes. But obviously being local to local, you're not going to see that fast. So the question is, you want to add point, link, and shape codes to objects inside subassembly composer. So what I have here is I have my curb with sidewalk subassembly, and I want to add some point codes, link codes to L29, P19, and P20. First thing I always do to make things easy is I will click on my line, and then it will hide what sequence it's in. So I'll just go into there, go into my curb, and I will see L29 right there. And what I will do is I will come in, and this one is actually hard-coded, P20, flow line gutter. If I turn on my codes, right in there, you'll see flow line gutter there. So I will put in quote marks flowline underscore gutter because that is Civil 3D out of the box point code for that. So now if I have a code set, everything will match. If I use out of the box subassemblies, it will match. For my line, I have curb and top right in here. Also hard coded in, but I do have the ability in my input output parameters to come in, and I probably picked a bad one on here. Point, link, and shape codes. I have the ability to set my link code for the inside vertical on there. And what that is that is my base inside vertical L35 is set to none. And if I come in and make that Scott, it now changes to Scott. And if I come back to my flow chart and look for L35, it's going to be in that same spot, but just now in the base and L35. And what I've done on here is because it's an input parameter, it doesn't get quote marks around it. Quote marks is for hard coding. Base inside will match my input code of base inside. And I can do that for point codes, link codes, or shape codes. Here's the shape code for base. and it's just got base shape. I find base shape down in here, and I can change that to actually be ATG USA. And now that changes to there. So in Subassembly Composer, you will have point, link, and shape codes capabilities based off of what you have. Quote marks, it's hard coded. If it's individually put in there, like L35, it can pull from the input output parameters.
Scott, do I want to add like 500 parameters in one go?
Oh, always. Just for the fact that there is no rearranging out of the box. Simple, which is one thing I would love Autodesk to do, is give me the ability to drag and drop. So what I typically will do is I will create about 30, 40 parameters at once, well, maybe 20. And then I just come through, and as I build, I will add. Now, if I need to move, say, my common shape input parameter above my base inside, I do have the ability to take my PKT file, rename it to a zip file, extract my zip file, go into the XLM, and do some cut paste on there to rearrange it, but it is a pain in the butt. I found it's easier just to come in, click on one and say create new parameter, and then manually recreate, and then come in and delete the one that I wanted to move. But it does take a little bit of thinking ahead of time to say, hey, how do I want to put this? How do I want any input parameters? How do I want my users to see it? And that's what I've done on here, is I've created a dummy input code that actually says curb parameters, all caps, and then I put all my curb stuff in there. Then I have one for base and sub-base parameters. So in Civil 3D, you will actually see this broken down into kind of subheadings on there.
Yep. Awesome. We got several questions come in, so I'm going to try to keep these, we'll try to keep answers pretty short and sweet here because we're running close on time. Next one was, why would someone want to choose BIM 360 over Vault on a cloud server?
I haven't touched Vault, but I don't know how well Vault handles the data shortcuts, and because that was the issue 8 years ago, that was the issue 5 years ago, right. And I don't know if Vault has ever taken care of the project and working folders for data shortcuts.
And that's basically where BIM 360 was too for the longest time, except for this newer versions of 2020.2 or 3. Yep. Had the same issue, couldn't handle the data shortcuts.
But yeah, 2020.1 and forward does handle data shortcuts and XREFs pretty well.
Okay. Brian has asked, he's heard there's some issues with SSM with BIM 360. Any truth to that? Anybody know?
I can not agree or disagree. I have not dealt with the sheet set manager in BIM 360 yet.
Okay.
Sure.
Any feedback?
Kyle?
Anybody else?
Have not had that experience. Can neither confirm nor deny.
Okay. The best place to be, Kyle Groves. Yep. So in Civil 3D, what is the difference between using grading or surfaces? And is there a benefit of using one versus the other?
Well, I would say that grading leads to a surface. So they're not apples to apples. But yeah, you'll use the grading creation tools to build a surface potentially. But then there's also just taking standard feature lines and adding them to a surface as a break line. So.
Yeah, I would say the grading tools are automation of a lot of things that you would do anyway in surface grading using feature lines. They relate back to, now, I have a pretty low opinion of the Autodesk out-of-the-box grading line. Other people on this panel have differing opinions than I do on this one. But pretty much anything you can do with the grading object, you can do manually with feature lines and add those to your surface by yourself. The grading tool set is supposed to make it easier, and it's supposed to make it dynamic. So when you change your parent feature line, your offset parameters, those 5 outside feature lines that are defining your curb, those inside feature lines defining your basin, safety shelf, and so on and so forth, are all supposed to update automatically. how well you use that workflow can have a pretty big outcome on the stability of it over time. But they're the same thing. The grading, I would say the grading just automates a lot of what you'd be doing with those feature lines anyway.
Okay.
Frank, do you have anything to add on that?
No, basically surfaces are surfaces and grading tools are used to create surfaces, as Scott said. And not always do you need the surface with the grading tools, but it gives you slopes and stuff like that, and where you can create them right directly from their grading tools, and you cut your slopes or whatever. And yeah, but it's all in all going to give you a surface at the end of the day.
Okay. Last two questions, I think, and then we'll be at time here. This one's kind of lengthy. Any words on how to work remotely? Basically asking for best practices. Would recreating an environment to replicate your work area suffice? We have a VPN, but heavy data shortcuts take a while to bring up a drawing. Would re-lettering a drive to mimic the paths and placing data shortcuts be sufficient? Or are there other better workflows? I think you guys tapped on it with BIM 360 while I was typing. So maybe I just answered my question and read that, but
Yep.
feedback on that.
Yeah, I would agree. Definitely, BIM 360 would definitely help, especially when you're talking about VPNing in. Definitely trying to mimic drives would be, I would say, don't do it, just for the fact that once you put something on your drive and Kyle put something on his drive and Frank put something on his drive, now you got 3 copies of the same thing. What is the latest and greatest? And basically it means the last person saving has the latest and greatest. So you may lose data if you try to start mimicking drives.
Okay, anybody else? Cool. Last question on here, and I know what my answer would be, but I'll let you guys answer it from your seat. A gentleman from the Iowa County Engineer's Office has a new employee, and before he sends him to some type of formal training, what's the best way to get him up and going? Is there an online beginner's guide that we can recommend?
YouTube works. We have a bunch of videos out there that handle topics anywhere from 5 minutes to a half hour long. But honestly, the help on Civil 3D, there's tutorials on there. The tutorials aren't that bad. It's a good starting point, but it will get you to the basic level. So you'll be able to understand a 4 or 5 out of 10 for expertise, but it gets your feet wet, and then you can dive into the more complex situations, more things that pertain to the Iowa Engineer's Office.
Yeah, I would second the Civil 3D out-of-the-box tutorials. I was actually using them earlier this week to kind of dust up on a tool set that I don't use very much. But also too, Chris, you could probably answer this one for us. Isn't that kind of the purpose of global e-training and
Yeah.
being an ATG Autodesk?
Yeah, no, 100%.
customer?
I wanted to hear what you guys had as other options out there before I put my sales hat on here. But yeah, no, if you're an ATG customer, and even if you're not, reach out to one of us, or I'll have somebody reach out to you. We offer all our customers globally training, and so you get access to that for free. There is an advanced Civil 3D class, and there's also a basic Civil 3D class. It's about 40 hours worth of content. You can hop around in different little short videos, but Steve, I'll have somebody reach out to you. If you don't have access to that and you want that person to have it, we can definitely get you set up for sure. It's a great way. It's the reason why we have global, to Kyle's point, is for that very reason. When you want to get somebody the, what I call the picks and clicks type training, global is a great format for it. Guys, we got 6 minutes. I think we had one more question on the chat.
I think actually there's a few in the chat window, Chris. Jeff from Nicholas Herreros. I think that one's important. We can get to that here.
Any advice on creating a surface that contains, say, 3 feature lines at different elevations that grade towards each other properly at once without creating multiple surfaces to accomplish the end results?
Actually, I have some comments on that one. Go ahead and share my screen here. So for anyone here who is on the call with this webinar format, it's going to be kind of hard to get a raise of hands, but just pat yourself on the back if you are familiar with a setting in your Civil 3D sites called the feature line style hierarchy. So what this does is it's one of the very few settings that live in the prospector tab as opposed to the settings tab. But if you go into a site and you go into the properties of the feature lines, what you'll see here is this dialog that has at the options tab, it's got your feature line crossings split point resolution. So what this does is it says when you have multiple feature lines that live in the same site, and a site is basically just a bin that we use to keep everything together. Anything that's inside of a site, as soon as it crosses, it has to share the same elevation. If you want different elevations, they have to be in different sites. But what this setting does is it says, when I have two feature lines that cross, do I want to be deliberate about which one of those elevations controls? So basically what you can do is you can say, my curb line is more important than my landscaping, or just kind of whatever it is, you have to throw it in up or down. You can come through here just like most of those other interfaces in Civil 3D and rearrange these. But what this means is you get to prioritize your design information. So in this file, I am using multiple surfaces, which is kind of outside of your question, Nick, but I have a couple of different things set up where I'm using a feature line, my properties palette open here, of the primary style to go through and do all of my major design information. But then in other areas, I have a feature line with the secondary style assigned to it so that when it follows or intersects or crosses over any other feature line information, it's just going to automatically read that data. So when I have this secondary feature line selected and I go into my elevation editor, I'll actually see that most of my, my points are gray instead of being green with their resolution status. And that means that I can't modify that elevation because it's being controlled somewhere else. This secondary feature line is being controlled by the primary feature line right underneath it. So for your case, Nick, I would say that whatever one of those 2 points you want to hold that elevation, you would set it to a feature line style that is high or at the top of that hierarchy. And then those other 2 feature lines can be at a lower hierarchy. And then when you come in and you just drop your vertices on top of each other, they'll all take that same elevation from the highest priority feature line.
Awesome. Well, guys, it is 11:58. We have gotten through all the questions, I believe. Any parting thoughts of wisdom from you Civil 3D gurus? I found that hard to believe now.
Hopefully you can see the broad range of skill sets with our guys. If you have any questions, definitely reach out to us. We can help you out.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Oh, for sure.
But thank you, everybody.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Thanks for everybody's time on the webinar. Gentlemen, thank you for your work as always and your time today. I appreciate it and hope everybody has a great day.
All right, thank
Take
you.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.